In this video, I'm going to show you how we took this blank garden wall and added a load of paneling to it to make it look a lot more modern. I'm then going to show you how that paneling ended up actually twisting and warping and not looking that good after a few days of it being in the sun, and how we went about fixing that. There you go. So starting with the blank wall, the plan is to first figure out how we were going to attach the battens or the slats, whatever you want to call them, to the wall. And the plan was we were going to take 4 posts and attach them to the wall. These would need to be leveled and sorted out and all that. And then we could attach the slats to these spanning across the posts. Now you'll notice between the clip I just showed and this one, some caps had been added to the top of this wall. And that meant that when we put the battens up, we were going to have to take a notch out of them for them to fit over the cap. So that was the first job we had, and I'll cut to a clip of doing that just now. With all the posts cut to the correct length, it was time to take the notch out so that they would fit over the caps. And I did this by setting the depth of the circular saw to about half of the wood, and then making a load of relief cuts, which I'd then knock out with the chisel.
Whoa.
That is the most satisfying thing I've ever seen.
Oh, one has.
Oh, that's nice.
You know those bits we've got left?
What, to use as the spacers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Because that's better.
In terms of putting the posts up, the first thing to do was check that it was perfectly perpendicular to the ground in 2 directions, meaning as you looked at it, it was perfectly perpendicular, and then also if you sort of looked along the wall, it had to be as well. And that was an issue because the wall isn't perfectly flat, so you'll see in a later clip that we had a spacer from the little offcuts we had from that process of notching out earlier. But yeah, all we did, simply drill through the posts. That gave us a hole in the wall that you saw earlier. Drill a bigger hole in that, and then you can put a plug in and screw it in. In an ideal world, we would have had a laser level to show us where the next post should have been to be level with the first one, but we didn't have one of those, so we took what looked to be a pretty straight board or slat, whatever you want to call it, put a spirit level on that and made sure that was level, and then that gave us a mark where the bottom of the next post had to be. The plugs for this bit of the wall had to be a bit shorter, so that clip there was just cutting them down, and you can see that they now sit flush with the wall. And then, yeah, we mounted this batten in exactly the same way. So with all the battens mounted to the wall, I could briefly escape the spider-infested hellhole of the outside and return to my spider-infested workshop instead, where I could use a table saw to rip down some 12mm spacers that would be used to separate each of the individual slats. Now, you can either start from the top or the bottom. We opted to start from the top, and the important thing here is that you get that one level. Once that's done, you can just use the spacer to determine all the subsequent slats that go on. As you can see, we're putting one spacer on one side, one spacer on the side I was doing, and that leaves, or should leave, 2 slats that are sort of perfectly parallel to each other, and then you just repeat that the whole way down the wall. With the second panel done, we realized we probably mismeasured at some point because we didn't have a lot of overlap left to attach the third lot of battening. I don't know really why I showed that, because it just shows how poor the job was. But I guess it's useful for you to make sure you measure lots of times, so make sure you do that. So the final few battens gone on, that is the main structure of this project done. We obviously need to put the garden back together and everything, but yeah, all the panels are on, they're all looking pretty good and straight, and it's time to do a reveal. Everyone was pretty happy with how this came out. I was particularly shocked at the fact that everything seemed to be straight. But then a few days later, got this text. And turned out that when they sat in the sun for a while, the slats started to bow and bend and twist, and you can see that in this clip here. Some of the gaps started to become very inconsistent, or slats were sort of bending inwards, and it just looked a bit wrong. So I came back and we cut some more spacers and figured that we could put a batten behind and use a spacer to try and get a consistent gap in the middle of the slats. And this might not be perfect long term, but it seemed to do a good job. So there's a few clips here of all the sort of slats in the start of this process, and then I'll do a time lapse where you can see it all sorts of becomes consistent again.
Hey.